Welcome back everyone. So in the last video we solved product of array except cell, and in this video we are going to solve gas station. So let's dive in. Okay, so there are n gas stations along a circular route, okay, where the amount of the gas at the ith station is gas at I. Now you have a car with an unlimited gas tank and it cost I of gas to travel from ith station to the next I plus 1 station. You begin the journey with an empty tank at one of the gas stations. Now, given two integer arrays, gas and cost, return the starting gas station index if you can travel around the circuit once in the clockwise direction. Otherwise, return -1. Now, it also says that there exists a solution. It is guaranteed that it will be unique. Okay, and if there is no solution exists, then we can return -1. Now we will solve this question in two approaches. Okay, so the first approach will take big O of n square time complexity, and the second one will obviously be big O of n. Okay, so let's see solution one. So as per the question, we have to find the starting index. Okay, so what if we check every index, and if any index we find that if we start at ith index and we were able to reach the ith index after traversing the whole circle, then we can return that index, because it is mentioned that if the solution exists, then it is guaranteed that it will be unique. So if the solution exists, there can only be one index. If we start from that index, we will be able to reach at that index. Okay, so we will check every index, and if we were able to start at the I index and were able to reach at the ith index after traversing the whole circle, then we can return that index, else we'll return -1. Okay, so let's code the solution. So first we have the size of the array. So both gas and cost array will have the same size, so we'll take the size from the gas. So for int start index is 0 and start index is less than sz and start index plus plus. Now we'll start with the tank gas of 0. Now we will check that at this start index, can we reach the same index after traversing the whole array. Okay, so for int I is 0, I is less than sz and I plus plus. Now what will be our index? Index will be I plus start index minus sz. So we are starting with this index. So we'll start with this start index, and from this index we'll travel all the nodes, and if we were able to reach at the start index again, then we will return this start index. So if start index is 0, then this is the first index, and on the next iteration I will be +1, so this will increase our index, so we will be able to travel the whole array in circle. That's why we use the reminder with sz. Okay, so we'll get all the indexes ranging from 0 to the last index. Now if we are standing at the IDX, we will have tank gas of, we will have this gas. Okay, now if we want to go to the next station, then we have to reduce and give this much amount of the cost. Now after filling the gas from this index and reducing the cost, we check if the tank gas is less than 0, which means we cannot reach the next gas station. Then we will break out of this loop and see if the next index is the valid index. But if the tank gas is not negative, okay, which means that we were able to reach the next gas station, then we will go to the next iteration. But before moving on to the next iteration, we will check if this index plus 1 reminder sz is the start index, which means we are standing at the last gas station, and from that gas station we are able to reach the next gas station, that is nothing but the start index, and then we will return the start index. We completed the whole circle. Okay, else we will go to the next iteration. So for each start index we will verify if that the given start index is the valid index, and for the start index to be the valid, It start with the start index and reach again at the start index. Okay. And if we came out of these loops, then we know that we didn't find any index from which we can return to the same index again. Then we'll return -1. Okay. So let's see if this works or not. Okay. So our initial test case has been passed, and now we will submit this. And we got time limit exceeded, obviously, because this solution takes big of n square time. So just to recap, what we did is for each index starting from the 0th index to the last index, we check whether the given index is a valid index or not. And to check, we'll start from this index and travel the whole circle. Okay. And if we are able to reach the start index again, which means that the start index is a valid index, and in that case, we'll return the start index. And if we came out of these loops, then we know that we didn't find any start index, so we will return -1. Now we'll see the second solution. So second solution will take big of n time complexity. So now let's see the second solution. Okay, so now let's say this is the gas array and this is the cost array. Okay, now we'll start with the first index. Now at this index, you will take 2 units of fuel, but to move to the next gas station, you will have to pay the cost of 1 unit. Now this is greater than or equal to 0, so which means you can move to the next gas station. And when you reach the next gas station, you have 1 unit in your fuel tank, because this will give us 1. So you have 1 in your fuel tank and you can fill 3 units here. But to move to the next gas station, you have to pay the cost of 1, and which is 3, which means you can move to the next gas station. Now, if you move to the next gas station, you will have 3 units already. You can fill 4, but you have to sacrifice 1 unit to move to the next gas station. So you give up 1 unit. Now you are left with 6 units, which means you can go from here to here. Okay. So when you reach here, you have 6 units in your tank. So which means if you start at the start index, you will be able to reach at the first index again. So 0th index is our answer. Okay, one more thing. I have created these test cases. So in this, the solution might not be, for example, unique. But these test case I have created just to explain you. So for example, if you start with 3, you might be able to reach at 3 again. If you start at 4, you might be able to reach at 4 again. But the whole point of these cases which I have created is to explain you the logic of this solution. Okay, so we started with 0th index and we reach again at the 0 index, which means that the solution will be 0 index. We are assuming that there is no other index. If we start from those index, we will never be able to reach those index again. Okay, so we started in this from 0th index and able to reach at the 0 index again. Now let's see example 2. Okay, so this is our gas, this is our cost. Okay, now let's say you started with 0th index, right? Now you have 1 unit in your gas tank. Now to go to the next index, you will have to give up 1 unit. Now you are able to reach at this index with 0 unit of gas. Now you fill 2 unit of gas, but to move to the next index, you will have to pay 1 as a price. Now you are able to reach at the next index. Now at this index, you have 1 unit of the gas already in the tank. You fill up 3, but you have to give up 5. Now after giving up 5, you see you have -1 as a gas unit, which means you cannot reach the next index. So you cannot reach this. Okay, so you fail to reach. So we started from the 0th index. Now should we start from the first index or some other indexes? So the thing is, if you ever start from those index which you have already traversed in this path, then you will not be able to reach or cross this bridge. So let's say if you start from 2, you will not be able to cross this bridge again. If you start from 3, you will not be able to cross this bridge again. And why did I say that? Because when you started with the 0th index, right? Okay, so when you start with the 0th index, you pass on some units of the gas to the next gas station. So for example, you are standing here and you are here and then you are here and finally here. So you are able to cross this bridge but you are not able to go to this. So you are not able to go from this position to the next position. Now you are showing that I will start from this index and I will check, maybe I will be able to cross that bridge. Now see, when you come from this to this position, this station gave you some unit of fuel. It can be 0 or greater than 0. Okay, so from the previous gas station you received some fuel units. It can be 0 or more than 0. So think about it. You start with some units, maybe greater than 0, then you fill up the tank at this gas station, then you pay the price, and then you move on to the next gas station. Now here previous station passed on some units, you fill the tank, pay some price, and move on to the next station. Now you received extra units from the previous station, and even after receiving extra unit from previous station, you were not able to cross this bridge. Do you think you will be able to cross that bridge starting from the X units, which is from the current station? So let me explain you once again. So you are at this station and this station and this station. You are able to cross this, but you are not able to cross this. So what I'm saying is, you started with this position, okay, and from going on to this position, let's say you have in fuel 2 and you can fuel here 3 units. So okay, now if you move from this station to this station, you pass on 2 units to this. So now you already have 2 units, you filled 3 units more from this gas station, so now you have 5 units. But even after having 5 units, you are not able to cross this bridge, right? Then what do you think if you start from here only? And if you start from here only, the only units you will have is 3, right? So if you were not able to cross this bridge even after having 5 units, will you be able to cross this bridge after having only 3 units? No, right? So the only positions we are left with to start is this position. So from 3 to 4 we were not able to cross this bridge. Okay, let's find. So we'll start with 4 instead. Now at 4, you have filled 4 units of gas in your tank, and you have to sacrifice one to reach the next gas station. So now when you reach the next station, you have 3 units. Okay, now see, you have 3 units. Now at this position you had 0. Okay, so you filled the tank and you sacrificed one for the cost, then you move on to the next. When you move to the next, you passed 0 only. Now since you have 3 extra units, you will add 3 here, and instead of passing 0 here, you will pass 3 units. Now from this 3 plus 2 minus 1, that is 4. So earlier you passed 1 unit, now these 3 units will go to the next station. So here 3 will add, 3 units will add. Now here you see, earlier we had 3 plus 1 4 minus 5, that is minus 1. Now you have 3 plus 3 6 plus 1 7 minus 5, that is 2 units. Now you are able to cross this bridge. So you have 2 units passed to the next gas station, which means you completed this part first, then you started with this, and when you start with this, you came at the 0th index. Now at 0th index, you received extra 3 units, which means that if you start from the index 3, you will be able to reach at the 4th index again. So what I did is, let's see, you completed this part, okay, but you are not able to complete this part. You are not able to complete this part because the gas, so the gas in your tank was minus 2, sorry, minus 1, because the gas in your tank was minus 1. Now you started from this position and you come at this position, okay. Now from this position, when you came at this position, you had 4 units already. Now when you started with this, you had only what, 0 units to pass on to the next gas station. You passed 0 units. Now you will pass, sorry, here we had 3 units. Now you will pass 3 units. Now you will pass 3 units. Now you will pass 3 units, which means you will pass 2 units here, which means you were able to complete this bridge gap. Okay, so the thing we understand from this example is that if you are able to complete, if you were able to complete this part, and let's say your starting index was this, then the next starting index will never be this, will never be this, it will only be the next index. If you are starting at here, it will not be this, it will not be this, but will be this. Now we'll see the next example to understand it more clearly. So this is your gas array and this is the cost array. Now we start with this index. Okay, so at this index we have gas of 1 and we have to sacrifice -3 units. Now we have -2 units, which means we were not able to reach the next index. Okay, so let's say we start with this position. Now at this position we have gas of 2, but we have to pay 1 as a price and we are able to reach at the next index. And on reaching that, we already have 1 unit as a price, 1 unit as a gas. We fill 1 unit more and we sacrifice 4. So we are left with -2, which means we cannot reach the next index. So let's say we start with 5 instead. So at this point we fill the tank with 5 units. We gave 1 as a price and able to reach the next index with the 4 units in our tank. Now at this point we fill 3 more units, pay 1 as a price and able to reach at the 0th index with 6 units. Okay, now here you see we had 1 minus 3, that is -2 units, so we cannot cross the bridge. Now we have 6 units at this position, so we can add these also. So plus 6 will give us 4 units. So here we had 4 units. Now 2 minus 1, that is 1, and plus 4, that is 5. So earlier we passed 1 unit, and instead of passing 1 unit, now we will pass 4 units. So it will be 4. So now we have 4 plus 1, 5 minus 4, that is 1 unit, which means we are able to cross this bridge also. So now we were able to cross this bridge also. Now we came at this position. So we started at 5 and we finally come at 5, which means 3 is our index, from which if we started, we were able to reach at the index again. So we started with 5 and we were able to reach at the 5 again. Okay. Now let's see one more example. So let's say this is our gas and this is our cost. Now you are standing at here. Now you have 2 in your fuel tank. You have paid 3 as a price, which means you are not able to reach the next. Okay. Now we'll start with this. Now if you will start with this, you have 2 in your tank. You have to pay 3 as a price. Now still you cannot reach the next station. Now let's say you start with this. You have 1 in your tank. You paid 1 as a price. And yes, you are able to reach at the this index, but you passed 0 units of the gas. Okay, so you started with 1, but you are able to reach at the 0th index, but from 0th index again, since there is no fuel left in the tank, you will start with the same situation again, so you will not be able to reach the next station. So our answer will be -1. Okay, in this case. So if you haven't understood the solutioning, maybe watch the video again. Okay, so now we'll code the solution. Okay, so initially we have tank gas, okay, which will be 0. Now we'll have total gas, which will also be 0, and have start index, which will also be 0. Now we will traverse only one time, so int I is 0, less than sz, and I plus plus. Now at this point our tank gas will be, we take the gas at this position, and to move on to the next position we have to pay the price, which is I price, and also the total gas will be, we take the gas at I and pay the price at I. Now at this position, if the tank gas is less than 0, which means you cannot move to the next index, then our start index will be something else. So our tank gas will reduce to 0 again. We'll start with the next index. So our start index will now be I plus 1, the next index. Now finally, after doing this, we will check if the total gas we are left with is less than 0, which means you cannot complete the circle and you will return -1. else you will return start index. Okay, so let's see if this works or not. And now we'll submit this. Okay, and our solution got accepted. So just to recap, what we did is we'll start with the tank, empty tank. We have total gas, that is total accumulated gas. So overall we will see the starting index is 0. Now we will take the gas at this station and pay the price. Similar for total gas. Now if the total gas is negative, which means we cannot go to the next station, then we'll start fresh with the next gas station. So tank gas will be 0 and start index will be I plus 1. Now from that station, so you can see also that we are starting in 0th index to the last index only. So now we will reach the last index, and after reaching last index, if the total gas in our tank is greater than or equal to 0, which means we might have started from many indexes, but after reaching or completing the traversal of this array, then we have something in our gas tank. It can be 0 or more than 0, but it is not negative. Then in that case we'll return the start index, else we'll return -1. So the tank gas here decide whether we have to change or start fresh from the next gas station, and the total gas will decide whether we were able to complete a circle from that index or not. Okay, so that's it.